For those of you that this is your first time joining us, I am the Title I and technically the CARES Act grant manager, and I am one of a small but mighty team. So I'm going to ask for other members of the CARES Act grants team to introduce themselves. Sabrina, I see your picture popped up, so I'm going to go to you first.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the new platform. I'm Sabrina Boyd, Grants Compliance Officer in the Office of the Comptroller, part of the CARES Act team.
Thank you, Sabrina. Sandy Grimes. I know Sandy was over in Teams as well. She may not. Oh, yep, here she is.
Sorry, I was on the phone with a school. So sorry. Fun.
Sandy, do you want to introduce yourself? I think the majority of the folks know your awesome self, but.
Hi, guys. I'm Sandy Grimes, coordinator for the financial support team. And we're happy that you guys are all here and figuring it out. I've only received a few emails. So hopefully everybody I'll keep an eye on my email in case they say they're using the old link.
Okay. I don't see Jerome. Does anyone know if he caught the new link that was sent out? The one that was sent yesterday expired. Apparently I didn't set it up correctly, but it is set up correctly now. You know what? Lord knows I'm learning. So it is now created. It'll be the same link. It's set up recurring, and it's good to learn a new format. So I know that this first meeting, there'll be some transition, but this will be the same link that we will be utilizing moving forward. And we appreciate you naming an equity issue by our finance techs not having access to Microsoft Teams. For those of you that weren't aware, the reason that the platform was moved to Google Meets is that not all school stakeholders had access to Microsoft Teams, and given that the school division is moving to Zoom, the decision was made so that it was fully accessible. This meeting was fully accessible, that we needed to move to either Teams or Blackboard. And I have just found that Google Meets is a much better platform with less issues than Blackboard. So we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. If Jerome comes in, we'll pause and allow him an opportunity to introduce himself. Sandy, are there any other members of your team on the call today?
You're on mute, Sandy.
I don't believe so. All
Sandy,
right,
you're on mute.
I'm shooting them an email to see if anybody wants to come. I know some of them were busy this morning, but I'll shoot them an email.
Okay.
Because I think it's good for them to hear this stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have a few updates. And Sandy, one of the big questions, the fourth one is all you. So I'll take the first three and then I'll turn it over to you. So one of the, the first one is, what is the new link to CARES office hours? For those of you that are here, you've made it. In the CARES Act office hours Q&A, I've also put the link. If you know any stakeholders that aren't here, please make sure that you share the link to this platform. And more importantly, please share the link to the Q&A. The Q&A is updated by close of business every Thursday following CARES Act, and the recording is uploaded as well. And I've tested the recording out this morning, and it's uploading great, so we won't have any conversion concerns with that. Please know that as you review the Q&A, these are questions that have been asked during the week, and we during the week's meeting. What I've been advising schools, AAs, when they reach out to me privately, is I say to them, at a minimum, review the last 4 meetings. You can quickly see the Q&A. If you feel the need to go and watch the recording, it's there, but it's not necessary. So another question that has been popular this week, and my apologies, I am still admitting folks who are using a non-fcpsschools.net email address. So thank you for your patience as I'm doing some navigation here. A great question, two actually, that came in this week that I wanted to make sure I shared is, would it be acceptable for our teachers to report hourly work using CARES Act intervention in the latter half of June in order to support struggling students and prepare them for their summer learning course? And the answer to that is absolutely. That is an excellent utilization of the funds. Right now, June 30th, 2021 is the timeline for the funds. So you may absolutely continue to use the hourly teacher and the hourly technical funds for intervention. Also keep in mind that if your IAs provide intervention, that would charge against hourly technical. However, that pay band should be adjusted to a pay band commensurate with the work that they're doing. With principal approval, most schools for intervention are using pay band 7. So I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page with that. Another question that came in that I thought was fantastic when we're sharing ideas on how to utilize the CARES Act funds. Can CARES funds be used to pay staff to assist with the collection of the technology that was distributed earlier on? And the answer to that is absolutely. Be sure that the HR 11 and the FS 174 utilize the description CARES-support. This should be charged to hourly technical. Remember, teachers are still paid at hourly pay band 15. And but everyone should be charging to hourly technical, which is sub-object 2001. Any questions about the utilization of CARES funds for summer learning or for the collection of the technology at the end of the school year?
I want to say 2 things, Yvonne, just to kind of add on to what you said. Everything Yvonne said is absolutely correct. Remember, we're saying the funds you can use from June 30th. If you're being a monthly paid employee in June, their pay is not going to hit until July. Okay, so you're going to have to do accruals at year end in order to make sure we account for that. They're doing, so it's real important if you've got people working towards the end of June that you get that time and attendance in, correct? If they're a monthly paid employee, you're going to do an accrual because their time is not going to hit until July. in the new month. So it's an accrual that will cover in year-end workshops also. The other thing I want you to keep in mind for the laptop distribution is keep an eye on your appropriations. Okay, so you only got so much money for hourly teacher and so much money for hourly technical. So you don't want to overspend. Those funds are not rolling together. So those were the two things. Sorry, it's worth mentioning because we're getting into year end and all the things that kind of make everybody anxious.
Absolutely, Sandy. And it's important that, we are collaborating on that, just because with your fiscal side and my program side. So I appreciate you putting that out there so that that can be captured in the minutes as well. Sandy, so this next one is for you. Where can I locate information on the CARES Act reconciliation report?
Okay, so if you go to the financial services page, it's out with the rest of the documentation that we actually updated. And I will be putting it in my weekly email. I think I included it, but the link in my weekly email with the information. But if you go out to the intranet, FCPSnet, and you go to financial services, departments, financial services, and on the right-hand side, it'll say the school conference was first, but the second is Corona Aid Relief and CARES Act. And then if you click on financial guidelines for schools and departments, we updated the whole on the right-hand side, the guidelines. You can click on guidelines for schools and departments, and it's section 8 and section 9 for reconciliations were updated in that guideline. Section 8 and section 9.
And Sandy, I also
Thank
put
you,
the
Yvonne.
links. Yeah, my pleasure. I put the links to the CARES Act website in the chat. And I also put the link to the PDF, the financial guidelines PDF, so that they could quickly click on those and access them.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and that'll tell you, it's basically, you guys, I will tell you the new FMR report is basically an orbit report. All of you are used to pulling your orbit reports for expenditures. When you go into the months, you're now going to see CARES Act. So you'll see an orbit FMR for CARES Act. So you can, if you have not reconciled CARES Act before, you're going to go back and print previous months. Now, you may not have activity because you didn't start using the funding, but if you have expenditures, you're going to go back and print those for every month. And that's the report that we want you to use and reconcile and include in your CARES Act folders by month.
Yeah, and Sandy, what I'm recommending is is a naming convention. I had a school reach out to me today, and so if they're saving March reconciliation, I put a naming convention in the chat that I encouraged her to utilize. And then, the question that she also asked, which makes perfect sense to me, was could they just attach all of their monthly documentation to that reconciliation? And I believe that is fine, because then that way you've got the reconciliation report, you have the FS 174s that match that reconciliation. So I
Let
told
me
her
ask
that
you a question though. I don't have a problem with that, Yvonne. But when you were reconciling, part of your problem was when people did a big scan with a lot of pages with scrolling through. So when they hear you say they can put it all together in one scan, keep in mind when you do that reconciliation, you're going to have to split it out again, and it's going to be harder for you.
So that was when we were actually going back in and attaching documents in Focus.
Okay.
And given the volume concern, I'm no longer going back in. I did that for the month of October only. And
Okay.
so moving forward, everything, I'm going to go straight to those school folders. And as long as it's in the school folder, we're golden.
And you're just marking them off.
I'm marking them off, and I'm no longer going in and attaching documents on the back side.
Just wanted to make sure that that's not going to be an issue for you.
No, actually, it makes it easier to have all the month's documents in one spot. But if I want schools to continue the process that they have in place. So if they still want to save their FS 174s by teacher, whatever process they started, I want them to continue. I'm not going to ask them to shift. But it was, the question was, well, if I'm going to reconcile, can I just attach everything in one PDF? And my answer to that was yes. So there's flexibility. Are you good with that, Sandy?
I am. Doreen's got a question. Are we able to submit an accrual request for any unused? No, it's for people. An accrual, Doreen, is people who work in June for CARES who are going to get paid in July. If they're working in July, you cannot do an accrual. So if they're working in July, that's into the next year. An accrual is people who work in June, work in the current year, and get paid in the next year. So no, you can't do an accrual if they work in July.
And Tasha has her hand up.
Yes.
Hey, thank you so much. Two questions, one for Sandy. Could you remind me when those accruals are due by in June?
I don't have, on the top of my head, I don't have the notice, but the year-end notice is out, and we have the calendar for the workshops for year-end out. So it's not going to be due probably until after the workshops, and in June sometime is when we do the accrual. So I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date, but I will tell you the date of the workshops. If you'll give me just a second.
Well, Ann Prentice is saying June 4th, which is pretty early. So this will be important for us. We have to be really organized and know exactly how many hours our teachers are going to be doing in all of July. So, okay, so that.
In all of June.
June, yes, sorry. Yeah. Yes, all of June.
I just want to be clear.
I
really
know it's you mentioned
confusing.
That. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And then for Yvonne, you had mentioned something about doing an intervention during the last 2 weeks of June. Somehow I spaced out, and you mentioned something about pay band 7. That wasn't for teachers. Who was that for?
That is if you have your instructional assistants,
okay,
who are going to be doing some intervention work as well.
Okay, all right, good to know. Thank you.
All right, my pleasure.
The May training calendar for year-end workshops is posted May 4th through May 13th. Please refer to the calendar and sign up through My PDE. Let's see. Doreen, there's other grant funding that's going to be available. We're waiting on leadership and direction on how that funding is going to be. So our understanding is that some of summer school can be possibly used using other grant funding. The funding I'm referring to, which has not changed, is the money that was allocated this year, ESSER Cares grant funding, and this is the #1 grant funding. So there may be funding available. We don't know how it's going to be allocated. They're looking at it. We know we're getting more ESSER funds. We're getting more funding. What we don't know yet is how that's going to be allocated. We anticipate that summer school will be part of that. But again, wait for more information. And I am sorry we can't be more detailed, but we share information with you guys as we get it and get information from leadership. And we really appreciate your patience. It's tough when we're getting into year end and trying to make decisions, but I will tell you, I do believe there's going to be additional funding. Do you agree, Yvonne?
Yes. So what I'm going to say is there's a summer school meeting with our team and the comptroller's office and various stakeholders to discuss what that might look like. I'm going to be transparent and say that principals are advocating for schools not to be provided allocations, but it to be managed centrally. And so the meeting that is scheduled for next week will finalize that process and identify how much money, who's going to be responsible, is it going to be managed centrally, who's going to hire the teachers, is Title I going to support above and beyond. So please know that we will get additional information out. But Sandy, it does look like that that money is going to come from ESSER 2, as I understand it right now. So more information to come on that, absolutely.
So again, we will share information absolutely with you guys as we know more. And again, we appreciate your patience. It feels like it's a moving target, but that's why we're having the meetings and having you guys come and encouraging you to read the Q&As and to make sure, because we're trying to keep you as up to date as we can. Let me go back to some of the questions. If we do not have any charges on our CARES, does our principal need to sign the no data report? I think yes. Yep.
Yep. To Leslie's, go ahead, Sandy.
There was also a question about, I want to go back up because I think I missed it. It was talking about planning times to rearrange their rooms for students returning. Yvonne, I'm going to defer to you on that one because I'm not sure how that relates to intervention and support.
So here's what I'm going to say. CARES Act funding has been approved by the Virginia Department of Education for the utilization of intervention, family communication, scheduling, those items specific to CARES Act. First of all, there is CARES Act funding has not been allocated for the utilization of substitutes. However, if you have a person that serves as a substitute and you are going to pay them as an hourly teacher against hourly technical or hourly hourly teacher or hourly intervention, the work that they do must be related to the allowable uses of CARES. And I would say in this case, arranging rooms would not be allowable under CARES. If you're bringing them in to do an intervention, if you're doing them to work with scheduling, if you're bringing them in to engage families, then yes, that would be permissible. But as this one is currently worded, I would have to say that is not an allowable expense. And, you know, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that these funds were released by the United States Department of Ed with 16 categories for which we were allowed to utilize the funds. And Sandy's team and the compliance team has worked with leadership to ensure that the funds are in alignment with the allowable uses, right? And we had to submit an application to VDOE based on identified needs. And I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that everything that we do, the United States Department of Ed says that it has to be coronavirus related and it has to be within our approved application. So when we say no to things, please know that it's not because we're just not being reasonable, but we have to follow the guidelines set forth for the utilization of these federal funds, right? And so our job is to keep Fairfax in good standing with not only the Virginia Department of Ed, but the federal government, because every single purchase, we have to do a reimbursement request with the Virginia Department of Education. And there is a dashboard out there that tells the United States Department of Ed how much of our allocations we've expended, and we have reporting requirements that have to be done on a quarterly basis on what we're spending it on. And in part of that reporting requirements, we're verifying that it met the allowable uses, right? And so I just want to let everybody know that when we submitted the application to the Virginia Department of Ed, the needs at that time were around intervention, family communication, and then the technical piece was really, again, engaging with our families, but at that specific time, we learned that with the tens of thousands of returned learning packets and the Title I team, we had done school supply distribution for all 41 of our Title I schools. And then there was a second round that we worked with various stakeholders to send out school supplies we mailed school supplies to every single student in the elementary school that was considered low income. And we had, between the learning packets, the tens of thousands that were returned to us, and then the school supplies, I processed returned school supplies for 6 months after they were mailed. And we had a SIS issue. And so when that application was submitted to VDOE, those were our identified needs. And because that is how VDOE approved our application, we have to make sure that we continue to spend those funds in that same manner. So sorry I told a story, but I wanted to make sure that y'all had the big picture on the why when we say, yes, you can do this, or no, you can't do it. So thank you for bearing with me on that. Nora, Nora's question was answered. Yes, we still need to sign the no data report. Sandy, I'm going to, do you have any other updates that you want to cover?
I think that you guys, what we're finding now is a lot of what the schools are working on. So the FMR process is new. So I want to kind of reiterate and just say to you guys, we want you to print out your FMRs out of Orbit. If you already printed and used budget versus actual to see your expenditures against CARES Act, you don't have to reprint those reports. That's what you would upload and put as your FMR reconciliation if you had been using budget versus actual. If you hadn't printed anything, though, I want you to go back and print each month and get them signed and put them out there by month, you know, with the monthly name. Put them in your folder and put whatever month it is for that reconciliation and have it signed and dated. This is another level of detail that we need to kind of include. And we went back and forth on this, and the decision was it's easier for you guys to see it in an Orbit report. It's easier for you guys to print it, have it available, and kind of move on. And it's pretty easy to read, and you can see stuff. You still have to check your appropriations for what money you have. You can't overspend, because I can tell you when we look at that money in June, if you've overspent your allocation, it's going to get moved back to your operating fund, because we can't have negatives. So the other thing that I want to say is I know that it's frustrating for you guys when we give you guidance and we're trying to approve journal entries and things. And understand that when we're doing the review for a journal entry and the documentation that needs to be included, it should be that what we're asking for are missing forms, that we don't have the forms or the HR 11 or backup documentation that goes with that journal entry. If it's already been reviewed and Yvonne's already given you an okay on something, or I've given you an okay, or somebody said something, include that in your approval email, or put it in writing and include that in your backup documentation on your journal entries. We're not trying to make extra work for you guys. I promise you we're not. But we're trying to do what we've been tasked with doing, which is making sure you have backup documentation. So, it should have the new CARES FMR does have a spot to sign.
I printed it the other day. It has one line that says write your principal's name, and the other line says have your principal's signature. It doesn't have.
Oh, it's the principal's, not yours. What I would do, Cindy, is exactly what you guys do for your FMRs, is initial it. We're not going to call you on it and have you go back, but yeah, my suggestion would be to initial it. Is that what you're doing with your FMRs today?
I did it for my CARES FMR, but the normal FMR has a spot for us to sign and a spot for the principal to sign. So I just put my initials and date on it like we do with the credit card statements.
That's fine. And you know what? I'll put something in the weekly email. Part of me wants to go back. I'm not going to have them redo it and put y'all's signature line. I think it makes more sense to have you guys initial it. Are you okay with that, Yvonne?
Absolutely. So I'm fine with that. I agree. We shouldn't go back and revise the form. And Sandy, as I believe that as long as we have the principal signature on the form, that we're good there.
Okay.
Because so
I'll let my team know to let them go through.
yes, because I'm looking at Tasha. Last week at the CARES, she printed hers off like right away. And so she has all of hers in her CARES Act folder.
Yeah, we have quite a few people that do.
Yes. And so it's I'm looking at these and it's only principal signature. And I'm not going to ask folks to go back and redo that. I just feel that it's unnecessary.
Principal signature is sufficient.
Yes.
We're gonna make a across the board principal signature for these are fine.
Yes.
Sandy,
As long as you're okay with that, this meets my.
I am okay because the form as is has been approved.
Good.
You're right. Making people go back is only making more work, and I'm not
going to do that.
We're not going to do that. We want to be reasonable.
Yes.
I have a question. Since this is the first month we are printing out the CARES FMR for the previous months, what date should we use? Do we use this month's date? Today's date for all the previous months?
Yeah, because you're printing them out. All the principals sign in is, I've reviewed it, you're marking off that the expenditures are right and that you have all the forms. So what this is doing for you guys is it's making it easier for you to reconcile and make sure you have the right documentation. So you can see the expenditures that hit directly against CARES. You can make sure you have your forms and all your backup documentation. If you've submitted a journal entry for that month, it'll show up on your FMR. And again, make sure you got your documentation with your journal entries. And then and like Yvonne said, if she doesn't care, you can put it all together. So we want to try to make this as easy as we can, realizing that this is not necessarily an easy process.
Right.
So
and so Sandy, on Monday, when I send out, let me back up because my brain is ahead of my mouth. So over spring break, I reconciled hourly teacher through the end of December. And on Monday, I sent out emails to schools that were missing documentation for that time. And actually what ended up happening with a couple of the schools is that it was discovered that teachers had charged to the wrong school, right? And so what happens is that they now have to go back and do a journal entry to move that time from the school that it charged to the school that it needed to charge to, right? So the beauty of this reconciliation process is that if there are those nuances, you're going to be able to work on those right away, right? And not wait until I'm reconciling an FMR for VDOE submission to come send you an email to say, hey, I need an HR 11 and an FS 170 form for this teacher to get an email that says, oh, that teacher works at school Z, right? So it is helping you make sure that the actual expenses charged should have charged, right? Rather than me coming in on the backside and saying, I need this information. So just to kind of let you guys know that On the FMR that we are currently working on for the Virginia Department of Ed, it is over 212 pages and over 8,900 lines. And we have to touch every single one of those lines because the descriptions that we have to submit to VDOE is so specific that we've been working on that FMR for a month, and we are probably 30% through the FMR because of the level of detail that VDOE requires us to have. And when we submit that, VDOE there is a presumption that not only do we have all the documentation, but we have verified all of the hourly that is charged against that, right? So again, being transparent on all the why behind it. Sandy, I'm going to go back to the chat, and there is a question from Monique about the decision with intervention transportation and the utilization of CARES Act funding. Monique, the decision was made that CARES Act funding cannot be utilized for transportation. However, I encourage your principal to reach out to Region because there is an intervention support group that Region is hosting that made a decision around intervention transportation, and there may be operating funds for that. So I'm going to refer you back to your Region executive principal for that question.
Somebody asked if they need to go back before July. Expenditures for CARES Act are just this year.
July 1.
July 1.
Yep. Yes. And okay. Cindy, I noticed that the new CARES FMR doesn't give us spot. Okay. We've covered that. Tan says, will the dates be today? They should be the date that yes, the review. We're not asking you to go back and falsify records. We want today's current date. Dawn, the FMR for CARES Orbit only goes back for October. Is that correct, or am I missing something? Sandy?
I don't know that anybody had any charges. I think it's mostly journal entries that were done.
Yeah, I know that the departments had some charges, but are you having the departments do these reconciliation reports too? I know we talked about that at one point.
I put it out for everybody, but yes, that we did this for schools. Shaquille approved us doing this for schools. It would behoove departments to print their FMRs and do this, though.
Okay, I know. So I'm going to take off my grant management and I'm going to put my private school management hat on the department perspective. I know that as we have reconciled our purchase card and the private school piece, that we do have all of our FMRs. So if I just take those FMRs and sign them, I'm good, but right? Or do you want me to have Jessica go ahead and print them and have the official one there? Is it the same option that the schools have?
I believe they're available. Here's what I want to do. I need to go back and make sure, Yvonne, that they're available for all the departments before I go out and say, yes, do it. So I need to verify that first.
Okay.
So that I'm not giving incorrect information, because this was put out there for the schools to do. I believe it's also available for the departments, but I want to do a verification before I jump off that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm meeting expectation from the departmental side as well.
Let me try to pull up a couple departments and see. I just don't want to give wrong information.
No, I get it, and I want to make sure that I'm following the direction too, because I do know we're using our FMRs to help with the BDOE reimbursement as well. So our FMRs are actually serving two purposes there. Yeah, sorry, Monique, that is a bummer.
So what are
Christine,
you under, Yvonne? You would be under
OPLFE. And it actually may be that private schools have their own index. Actually, we have two. We have OPLFE because of our salaries, a portion of our salaries being charged to the grant. But then we would also have the private school piece. And I can work with you offline on that, Sandy.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I'm looking. I see some departments, but I'm not seeing yours.
Imagine that. Yeah, we would have the OPLFE, and then you would have the private schools.
Yep, not seeing it.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll chat offline.
We'll talk.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. So, Sabrina, any updates from the compliance office?
No updates for me.
All right. And Jerome, I saw that we got you in. Any updates from the budget side?
No, not any updates other than the emails that I sent you. Just let you know that the transfer that you put in Omega is now approved.
Okay, thank you. And to Jerome's point, for any departments on the call, Jerome is referencing the 5 GEAR grants, and 3 of those 5 GEAR grants are approved, and the budget transfers have been done for the 3 grants.
Yes.
Approved, and they are now aligned with the application. So as soon as we get the other 2 grants approved, the nutrition grant and the special education grant, we will do the budget transfer on the Omega side to put the money in the right state codes so that we can start working on the reimbursements for those 5 grants. So for those of you on the call, we're not only managing ESSER, but we have 5 ESSER 1, but there's a group of us that are also, we have 5 other grants as well. And ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 that's coming. So we're going to be busy for a while. Other questions that you may have for us? Stacy, thanks for all your help. I know we're assigning the hard copy of them for CARES and filing in the CARES folder. We don't have to do the online portion of the review approval like we do for the expenditure report and the position report, right?
I can answer. Here's
Please.
Stacy, what we have asked you to do is, as part of your expenditure reconciliation, when you submit that, you're doing it for both CARES and for your regular expenditure reconciliation. We didn't go back and change the application to include CARES. Our expectation is you print both of the expenditure reports. And when you do that, the principal's approving both of the expenditure reports at once, that you've done both of them. And that's from March forward.
So Sandy, Christine indicated that she's missing August and September FMR. And I believe that that's because we started as of October 1st.
Mhm.
Is that what you said previously?
I gotta go back and look. I'm in. Christine, never mind. I'll figure it out.
I have July, which shows the allocations of the money that we got, but then I don't have August and September. So I was just
It's
wondering if
probably because you had no activity. Let me just.
I didn't have any activity on other months, but I still had a blank, kind of a blank form to sign.
Let me go in and check for you, Christine.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Karen, I apologize if you've already answered this, but should we use all of our hourly funds and we start using our school's hourly teacher funds? Do we need to code it in a certain way to ensure it's recognized as a continuation of CARES related time? So Karen, I want to make sure that I'm clear in your question. So you're talking about once you have exhausted your CARES funding, do you need to continue the CARES process when that time is charged to operational funds? I want to make sure that I'm understanding your question. Is that right?
Yes, or is there some other type of documentation or anything that we need to keep that will identify it as additional CARES related time, but we don't have the funding for?
What I would do, sorry.
Go ahead, Sandy.
You want to charge your operating fund. You don't want to continue to charge the grant if you don't have funding, because you were only allocated a certain dollar amount based on the needs. So it would be up to you to keep a record, because the only thing we could do is if funding is available, other funding becomes available beyond your appropriation, a journal entry is going to need to be done. So you would be responsible for tracking that as CARES related funding. And if we allow that in a journal entry, you are going to need backup documentation. But again, I don't know how they're going to handle if you've used your appropriation and they're giving new money. So I until decisions are made on the ESSER 2 and 3 and how it's going to be allocated and spent, I think you just have to track it at your school in case we allow journal entries.
Okay, and then some kind of a notification will go out should that happen and we're allowed to, in theory, get more funds and do that journal entry. Communication will come out requesting who's interested.
Yes, and if it's available, it's available to you and it's out there, we will get that out to schools as we know. But again, it's going to depend on if they manage it centrally, if it's done. There's a lot of factors, and decisions have to be made on how that grant's being set up and how the money's going to be used. Because my guess, it's going to be pretty specific, right?
Yes, you're right. No, and I completely get that. And we knew this going in from the beginning that we were going to exhaust all these funds. So that's why I just wanted to get. So I will keep my tracking. Nope, that sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Great question.
Absolutely.
Let me make sure I haven't missed anything. Cindy, making sure you're pulling down. Tasha, our school won't be able to use all of our hourly teacher funds. All right, Tasha, thank you for that, that information. As of right now, the deadline for the utilization of those funds are still June 30th. What I'm going to say, Sandy and Sabrina, is I know that there has been a discussion about the potential of extending the deadline. As of today, no decision has been made to extend that deadline, nor if the deadline is extended, what would happen with those funds, okay? So if the decision is made to extend the deadline, then Tasha, you would be able to utilize the hourly teacher funds according to the new deadline. I know there was a question last week was, if they extend the deadlines, will the funds carry over or will they be scooped up? And Sandy, it's my understanding that if they do extend the deadline, that they will not scoop the funds. It will remain
Correct.
with the school, correct?
Grants aren't part of the operating fund carryover. That's part of the 10%. They are
Okay.
not. Grants are treated differently. So
They have different rules.
different rules. So in general, that's the case. Now, there are grants that are running out by the end of June. So
Correct.
So the rules are different depending on how the grant's set up. Each grant has its own kind of, here's how it's set up, here's how you can spend the money, and here's your deadline for spending it. So if it's extended, it will carry over.
What other questions might you have for a member of our team? I see Veronica, you have your hand up.
Hi, how are you, Yvonne? I just had a quick question. For the HR 11s, do we have to do a new one for each month, even though I have the same teachers using it, or just the first one and then that's it?
That's correct. So as long as the teachers continue, that what is listed on the HR 11 is still relevant, you can use the same HR 11.
Okay.
So it's how you fill out that form, how that HR 11's filled out. So if you put effective date and didn't put an end date on it, you're fine.
Oh, okay.
If you
Okay,
put an
perfect.
end date on it, you
I
might
did it.
want to go back and do yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Great question. And you know, Veronica, I really appreciate your question because we know that we have schools in various places along the journey. We have some schools that are just beginning their expenditures, but yet we have some schools that are well on their way and close to exhausting their funds. And so the purpose of the CARES Act office hours is, one, is to make sure that we're providing you regular updates, because it is like nailing Jell-O to a wall, right? There were some shifts along the way. But secondly is to provide everyone an opportunity, honor where everyone is in their CARES Act journey, and to make sure that we're all hearing the same information and learning from each other. So Veronica, thank you for asking that question. I know that you're, it's hard to ask the question, so I do appreciate that. And I know others do as well.
Thank you.
Kathy, I'm confused. I have my scanned backup for each expense and J in the applicable monthly folder after reconciling CARES FMR. Am I just adding that to the monthly folder it goes with? Sandy?
Yes, they can do that. If you've already got the stuff out there, don't go back and put it all together. But make sure you name it by month. So, and I don't care whether, I know Cindy Navarrete named hers a little differently, but if you've got the month, CARES Act FMR reconciliation. So if you've got, February reconciliation, put it out there and you can do it, but don't go back and do stuff. We truly don't want to make more work for you.
All right. I want to honor everyone's time. We're
One
over
more
by
thing.
1 minute.
Yep.
So I want to thank everyone for coming today. Please know that our team is here to support you. Please don't hesitate to send us emails or many of you have my cell phone number or office number. You know that my office number routes to my cell phone. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
I want to tell Christine that I was able to pull for her. I think she might have from the drop down chosen last year instead of August and September for FY21. I do see a no data report that I got to print. So Christine, if you have problems, contact me, but
Okay, I will, because I checked again and I still don't have it. So
okay, I can also PDF and send it to you, but I was able to pull it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks everyone. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.